Let's crack open a beer and share some thoughts.
Welcome to Hopinions, and it's our revisited special where we're going to look back over a whole host of things this week.
Beers, breweries, Untappd.
Yes.
To name three.
Untappd in particular, that will be the feature of the show a little bit later on. And of course, last time we did that, hopefully listeners will remember that we were sat with friends from Beernomicon going through the 10 Untappd Commandments, which we will be revisiting.
Revisiting, it may not be in stone anymore.
Yeah, we may be changing a few of those. So, what have you been up to in this last week, mate?
Not too much. I popped into the parcel yard, the Fuller's pub at King's Cross last week to meet up with a couple of ex-colleagues and revisited two old favourites of mine. One was the Fuller's ESB, which was tasting as good as ever, in my opinion. And but one I hadn't had for a few years actually was the Gales HSB.
Oh yeah, I've seen that about.
And it's obviously very different. You know, it uses the Gales yeast versus the Fuller's yeast, and the Gales yeast has got quite a fruity tang to it, like a really dark malty fruit. Both were tasting really good. They do look after their cask up there.
So I was going to say the parcel yard do know how to look after a cask beer.
Yeah, I think so anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what I always look for. I also tried a beer from Logan Berry, their Old Ale, which came in around about 4%. I've just written down here it was good enough for a second pint.
Well, that's a sign in itself.
If you're willing to part with cash again, yeah. I think it's always a good sign. And then on Friday, I was going to go to the AMPS class at work, and then I got an email from our creative director, the one and only Clayton, and he sent me a list of the beers that were being presented by the Hop Locker, the pop-up shop, or permanent pop-up shop, over at the South Bank Centre. And I resisted the first email, and then he sent another email, and then he sent a third email, just all you could see was the list again. And it was a pretty impressive list, actually, of beers. So we did go over there, and we froze, because where it is on the South Bank is in between the South Bank Centre, the Royal Festival Hall. Brilliant view across the Thames, but when it's windy and cold, it's a bit chilly. However, one of the guys serving behind the bar, one of Joel's friends, was wearing a T-shirt. And I was like, what? How are you doing that?
Yeah, in the middle of winter.
Middle of winter, where it's ice cold wind. I had shirt, hoodie, jacket, and I think I then put the hoodie up and put my gloves on. But yeah, I tried a couple of nice beers actually. I had my first burnt mill, which was quite nice. It was a DDH IPA, so it was very fruity, very full bodied. But yeah, it was nice, and I picked up a few of their cans of more sessionable strength one. The DDH, I think, was around 6%. They had Colonel India Pale Ale there, so I had to have a half of that because it was there,
because it's on, yeah.
And it was delicious. But the best beer was, and I only had a third of this, I hasten to add, was Bible Belt, an Impy Double Stout, whichever you want to call it, from Prairie. Had some wonderful, lovely, those dark flavours, like, you know, the chocolate and the coffee and stuff. So smooth, and none of the alcohol burn.
Oh, lovely.
It was absolutely delicious. And that's really about it from me, actually. Thursday evening, Friday lunchtime.
Well, it's more than me. That's that, because I've not been out. I've kind of been, I think, saving myself a little bit for this week and what's to come. But a few beers that I've had at home that I wanted to give a mention to. Firstly, a couple of weeks back, Northern Monk released their latest specials, which was a pair of beers called Death and Glory. One was called Death, the other called Glory. Glory was, I think it was something like an 11% triple IPA.
Okay.
And Death was a 12-point-something% Imperial Stout. So I leaped in when they popped up on their website and bought one of the triple IPAs and two of the stouts.
How did the triple IPA stand up? I mean, I suppose Unhuman Cannibal is around about that percentage, isn't it?
It is. It's about the same percent, yeah, within that range.
How did it sort of marry up to say that?
It was all right. It was more on. It was. For me, it was lacking bitterness, so it was leaning more towards the New England style of IPA. still tasty enough beer though. But I don't think it's one that will hang around in the cans in terms of its freshness.
Right,
I think you're really going to need to drink that one fresh. And I did then drink the Death as well, one of the Deaths, because I wanted to drink it fresh.
Yeah.
And yeah, it needs some time.
Okay.
I think it's everything's there about it. It's big, it's bold, it's in your face. It's got this massive roasted bitterness to it. I just think it needs time for those flavours just to sit and just calm down.
Or just to get a bit more mellow.
Yeah. So I've tucked one of those away for probably gonna. I'm thinking it's probably gonna appear in my 12 Beers Christmas.
Shut up.
And it's probably going to be the first ever can to make an appearance as well. So
I can't believe you've been talking about it.
I'm always thinking about it.
I know, but talking about it.
I then enjoyed from Moore Ray of Light, which was double IPA, and again this was part of their kind of unofficial Star Wars series that they've done.
Yeah.
So it was Ray, as in R-E-Y. Yeah. And that was stunning. I mean, for a double IPA in a can, it was thick, it was full-bodied, it had beautiful caramel, pine notes to it, and the conditioning on it was amazing. Whatever it is Moore are doing with their cans is making me want to drink more and more of them. No pun intended.
No pun intended, or pun intended, depending which way you want to look at it.
Whichever way you want to look at it.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I think some of the beers they've brought out in the last 6 to 9 months have been fantastic. And obviously, you know, the Crimbo Crawl, if we're going to talk about Christmas, is in Bristol, and Moore will definitely be up there.
They're definitely going to be on the list, yeah, for sure. Then just a couple of other beers. I had another of the Almasty beers from up north. This was their single hop Simcoe IPA, which was simply stunning. It was crisp, it was bitter, and it was everything that you want from an IPA, coming in at about 6.5%. Cool. Absolutely perfect. 330ml can, completely smashable. And then the last one that I want to mention was I bought well before Christmas, Brewdog released a series of beers. I think it was initially through EFPs only, which was the Hello My Name Is series.
Oh yeah, I saw you
9 beers.
Saw you had a couple of those.
Yeah, each of them only due to be released in their sort of country of origin. So each beer was from a different country, had a name relating to that country, and then had an ingredient that was known for by that country. Okay. Sort of thing. And I've got to say, on the whole, I've been completely disappointed with the series. It's been some of the beers have been absolutely shocking.
Oh.
I did have one at the weekend though, which was called Hello My Name Is Sari, which I think was a bilberry infused double IPA. Now I had to look up what a bilberry was. Yeah. And it looked like a blueberry to me in the pictures. Looks like it's part of the blueberry family. And it was quite nice. It was actually it had I think my notes on Untappd said that the nose was like a blueberry muffin. It had quite a sweet kind of biscuity nose, and then the bitterness really worked out.
So how many out of the series have you tried?
That was number 7. There's 2 more in my fridge.
So 7 out of 9 so far, and 1 you've really enjoyed.
And 1 that's been standout. Yeah, the rest of them have been average. Is even a push for some of them. Some of them have been. There was one which was a cherry one.
I mean, their specials can be a bit hit and miss, because their AB abstract can be a bit. I say bit, probably very up and down actually. Yeah. Also depending on when you had them as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I did revisit one of the last AB releases actually, which was the bourbon aged barley wine. 3 months on since the last time I've had it, and that's beginning to get a little bit better. Okay. It's taking on a lot more of the bourbon characteristics in that, and it's softening right out. That's coming on really nicely. I've got 1 more of those, which I'll probably give at least another 6 months to before
see how it carries on.
Yeah. So, but the last 2 I've got in my fridge, I think one of them is a Logan Berry, which again I had to find out what that was.
I've heard of that one. I hadn't heard of the Bilberry.
A Logan Berry seems to be the bastard love child of a raspberry and a blackberry.
Okay.
And the other one is an elderflower one, which is I'm guessing if I had to put my money on it, that would be the last one that I drink. because that's one I'm least excited about. So a bit hit and miss with the beers this week, but like I say, some real standouts. In there as well.
Some decent ones to try though.
Yeah. I'm just slowly working the way through the beers at home. Just you know, as you do.
Yeah, you mean when we've run out of money because of January?
Basically. Yeah. Right, so we're going to move on, and this is going to be something new that we're going to try in the show, and this is a section that we're going to call the list.
You just made the list!
So this is on the back of the discussion that we were having in the last show, which was a suggestion by James at Gammon Baron, who asked the question of which beers do we think work really well across all dispense methods.
Yeah, and he had Roosters, hadn't he?
Roosters, yeah.
One of the beers from Roosters. Which one was it? He said
Babyfaced Assassin.
Yeah, and I couldn't disagree with him.
No, I don't think either of us could. And I think we threw a few names into the hat initially.
Yeah.
But I kind of went away and thought, actually, we could play around with this. And so we asked for a little bit of listener feedback as well. So we got a little bit of that. So I've got my list, you've got your list. Let's put together the list.
Okay.
So what have you got on yours?
Okay, so we'll go with the one I mentioned last week, which is Jaipur.
Yep. That's on my list as well, so I'm going to tick that one
Okay,
off.
so it's cask, keg, bottle.
I
think cask is still my preferred, but if you get fresh keg, fresh bottle, there really isn't much in it, to be honest. I'm quite happy to have any of those dispense methods. Next up for me was a beer you actually mentioned you did have at the weekend, which you weren't too fussed about, and that was the Adnan's Jack Brand Mosaic.
Oh yeah.
I think you'd had it on cask at your local spoons.
I did. I just found it a little bit thin.
I had it on cask a couple of weeks ago at the Token House, a Fuller's pub near me at work, and it was blinding. And this beer will get mentioned again later on when we talk about Untappd. I would say again, cask, keg, and bottle. I am very happy to have the Mosaic from Adnan's. Before I carry on, in case a few more tick your boxes, what else have you got on your list?
Well, the few that I mentioned last week, which I'm just going to revisit. So again, keeping on the Adnan's theme, I'm going to stick with my Ghost Ship.
Which I believe I disagreed with.
You did disagree with because you don't like it on keg.
No. Although what I will say about it is that it is cask, keg, bottle and can.
Yes.
So it does tick all four boxes as availability.
And I think it works across all four. I really do.
I think keg is the poorest relation to all.
I do agree with that. I would put keg at the end.
Yeah.
I would
so
probably
I'd go cask, bottle, can, keg.
That would be exactly the way I do it. Magic Rock Common Grounds, which is on cask, keg and can.
Yeah, see, I think I've only had it on cask and from the can.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had keg version.
You'd know if you know cask version.
Cask
you
version,
had the cask version
at the tap room.
You had the cask version.
Yeah, I've never had the keg version.
You had the keg version of the Kentucky Common Grounds.
Yes, which was brilliant.
Yeah. And then the other one that I mentioned as well was Sonoma, Track Sonoma, which
brilliant shout.
Just works amazing.
But you've had the bottle recently as well, haven't you?
I have had the bottle recently, and it's tasted incredible out of the bottle.
I mean, that's pretty good because we both had the cask and keg before, and both big fans of that. So for them to be able to transmit that to the bottle as well, well done,
very well done. So
I've got a few more.
What else have you got on yours? There?
I've got Bengal Lancer from Fuller's, cask, keg and bottle.
That's a great shout. I hadn't even thought about that one.
Oakham Green Devil.
Yeah.
Again, cask, keg and bottle. I think it's fantastic across all three. I think that strength of flavour that comes from that beer.
See, on that one, I would put cask at the bottom of the...
I know, because especially after that night that the Aaron House put it on for us on a bottle share night on the keg.
On keg.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, loopy juice.
And the last one, and I've only had it on keg once, is the St Austell Proper Job. And we had it on keg at the All Tech Festival last year in Dublin.
We did.
And we were both quite taken by it.
It was incredible.
Saying, this really works.
Yeah.
And I would say that's another one which works really well.
Yes,
over the formats. That's my list of 5 on that one.
Okay, well I've got 3 more.
Okay.
I've got Magic Rock's High Wire, which works fantastically across all 3 dispense methods. Each method brings something just a little bit different to that beer.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I've got, in a very similar vein, 5 Points Pale Ale. as well, which works across all 3 dispense methods.
Yeah,
as well,
that's a very good shout.
In can, and I think previously you could have got that in bottle as well.
Yeah.
So possibly another one that's only available across all 4. And then the other one for me, and honestly, mate, this isn't sticking the boot in, but I've got Buxton's Axe Edge as well.
Oh, you bastard!
Because
you tried it up in Manchester, didn't you?
I've had it twice on cask now.
I've had it on cask.
It's almost like it's a completely different beer on cask, but it just tastes so amazing. It's more, whereas the keg and the bottle are very, very hop forward, and that's what dominates. The cask is very more malt driven, and just the other ingredients come out.
Yeah, I still that would definitely be. But if there was a beer I needed to tick off in cask version,
that would be it. Yeah. So those are our ones.
Okay, there's some really good ones there actually.
Yeah,
I have to admit, love the question.
I know it was a great question. So thanks James, and thanks for inspiring this new section of the show as well. We did have one listener come back, so Paul, unsurprisingly at UNRCD. He also put in a shout for Magic Rock's High Wire. And also said about Redwell's West Coast Pal as well, which we had to check beforehand if it was available on all dispense methods.
Yeah, I wasn't sure myself, but I mean, I've had the West Coast Pale from Redwell in the can quite a few times actually, because it's quite readily available in, I think, Tesco and maybe Morrison's. But
you can get it in Aldi now. It's $1.29 a can in Aldi.
Blimey, that's not bad. But yeah, I think I may have had it on draft, but I don't think I've ever had it on cask.
Yeah.
So Paul is obviously willing to try cask every now and again, because cask is his
he's
preferred
not a big
format.
cask fan, is he?
So,
So he's dipping his toe in. So that's our definitive list of beers that we think work across all dispense methods. Like I said, we're going to give this segment a go, but it's going to need you folks, the listeners, to help us with the content on it. So the question that we're asking for our next episode, if I can get my words out, this is before we start drinking, is which 3 beers would you recommend to someone to try? So if you had to recommend 3 beers, which 3 would they be? And we've already got ours, because beautifully segueing into the news.
It's almost like you planned it, Steve.
I know. Is the first news item that we're going to talk about, which is us.
Us, yeah, it's all about us.
Isn't it? Isn't it? So, why are we talking about us, mate?
Well, because a little while ago, or actually probably before Christmas, wasn't it? I think, or was it start of Jan?
Just after Christmas.
Yeah. Shortlist, which is a free paper publication, which certainly you can get lots in London, and I'm presuming elsewhere as well. They also do an online version, and they approached us plus some beer bloggers and beer shops, independent beer shops. I think about 12 in total, because they wanted to basically do January's out of the way. You may have been daft enough to be dry. Here's some beers we've recommended. So me and Steve went back and forth between us, and obviously. Start off with, we obviously came up with more than 3 beers.
It was quite the long list when we first started.
So we got there in the end though. So I'm gonna the beer I was definitely in favour of mentioning was the Thornbridge Jaipur, because again, going back to the previous list, it is very good in all its dispense methods, but also it is fairly readily available in a few places these days, supermarket, Waitrose and M&S.
Yeah.
And I think that was also common amongst the next couple of ones we chose as well. We wanted really to go for beers that, if you're going to get out of the January, if you have been doing dry January for whatever strange reason you may have had, these beers you can actually get hold of pretty readily, pretty easily.
Yeah, I think that was what you and I were working
Yeah,
for.
that's definitely that was our thing, wasn't it?
We were very conscious of, because I think we approached it with a view to our listenership as well, in terms of we've got listeners up and down the country and outside of the UK as well. And actually, if we're recommending beers that we're suggesting people should try, then those beers need to be readily available pretty much anywhere in the country, which Jaipur certainly is.
Yeah, plus Shortlist isn't a geek magazine really. It's not really a geek publication.
No.
So so Jaipur was my one I definitely wanted to throw in.
That was the one you you absolutely wanted on the list.
Yeah.
The one that I absolutely wanted on the list was Northern Monk's New World IPA.
Yeah.
Again, because of its availability, you can get it at almost every train station.
And it's a fantastic beer.
And it's a great beer. And then the third one we went back and forward over.
Yeah.
And we eventually settled on, I think it was your suggestion, wasn't it?
It was. So it was the 5 Points Railway Porter. Again, we'd gone Jaipur, New World IPA, both come from further up the country from where we are. But I do believe that Railway Porter is one of the best examples of a UK porter at the moment.
Yeah.
And is bloody consistent as well. It's a beautiful beer on cask. Just don't see it. I don't see it that often. But because they do, it is in bottles. I think it travels pretty well, and it's so nice. Such a, what is it? And it's under 5% still as well, isn't it?
It's 4.6.
Yeah, which makes it a beer you can have a couple of.
Session porter.
Yeah,
almost.
Session porter.
Yeah,
it's a new style.
Yeah.
I was definitely very keen again for us to do that. But we did go back and forth on a few different beers, but I think we both agreed on that one in the end once the suggestion had come out.
Yeah.
And there are another, on that article, links will be in the show notes, there are another 28 beers recommended as well.
It's well worth a read because there's a range of beers in there as
all
well.
Your styles are covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
All your styles are covered.
Yeah.
And there may be a few places in there that I mentioned but you haven't heard of before as well, like beer shops, which may tickle your fancy.
Yeah. But yeah, so we'd love to hear listeners' thoughts on what 3 beers they'd recommend for the next list as well.
Definitely. I mean, it was probably no surprise that we ended up with basically two IPAs and a porter.
Yeah, no surprise whatsoever. Which is quite a nice, again, almost seamless there, mate.
Yeah, I know.
Into listeners couldn't have not heard what was going on in the background while you was trying to read through that.
While I was chatting, a beer got open. So what we got?
We've got this is Snake Oil Double IPA from Renegade Brewery. It's a 7.5% beer, 440ml can, which we've featured. Renegade kind of featured them before because they are part of West Berkshire Brewery. And back on episode 28 of Hopinions, we had Ruth with us from West Berkshire, who was talking us through the whole of the Berkshire scene and their brewery. But let's have a taste of this beer and then we'll come back to the brewery a little bit more. Cheers. Okay, that doesn't taste 7.5%.
No, it doesn't.
First thing I'm going to say off the bat there.
Again, there's no alcohol burn. It's got quite that sort of toffee caramel is coming through at the moment.
There's a real blast of like pine freshness on the nose though.
Yeah, and also the I think that piney residue sort of comes in at the end as well.
Yeah.
Sort of so I think in the middle you get that sweetness, which is where you get, I think, the alcohol being hidden. At the end of it, that piney resiness really starts to come through, doesn't it?
It's coming now actually. There's a real dry bitterness in there that is really pulling out all
almost
that.
Feels like a bit of an old school dipper.
Well, it is, and I think hoping
is that what they've sort of
I think
gone
that's
for?
what they've aimed for. Yeah, I mean I'm really enjoying drinking that.
It's a good start. My initial thinking is I'm glad we've got a can each.
I'm glad we've got a can each, and we are grateful to Matt Matt Chinnery, who now also appears on the show every now and again. But
speaking of revisited,
speaking of revisited, he now works for West Berkshire Brew, so he gave us these cans to try on the show, and we are grateful for that. But I mean,
nice carbonation as well.
It's a nice carbonation,
lovely colour.
It's light in the mouth as well. It's not fizzing in the mouth. It's really well balanced. It is crystal clear as well, which is something that I like. I like to see that in a beer.
And hats off, because when we went to the Renegade launch in London that time, they were hoping to get this out, weren't they?
Yeah, they pulled it, didn't they?
But they pulled it because they felt it wasn't ready. So I'm going to say kudos for them for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it would have been easy to say, well, okay, we're told, a few people know about this double IPA, we're going to put it on, but they said no, we're not happy, it's not ready, it's not going on.
That is completely smashable. Actually, I'm maybe drinking that a little bit too fast.
Yeah, maybe you should read something else, Steve.
I think so. Yeah, more reading, less
more
drinking.
Talking, Steve.
So we've heard in the last week that Bradley Cummins, who is the co-owner, founder of Tiny Rebel Brewery, basically put out a blog called Make Camera Great Again, in which he was setting out his stall to run for one of the 12 seats on their national executive. So that news dropped. I think you actually...
Yeah, I spotted it last week.
Yeah,
Thursday or Friday. I messaged you about
this.
it.
And then since then, he's actually released a manifesto as well, which is...
This is the bit I haven't seen, but you've got a lot of paper in front of you.
It's 22 pages.
Bloody hell. He's not taking the piss then?
Maybe.
Well, maybe he is, but he's still... Well, all right, I'll rephrase that. He's still putting time and effort into his manifesto.
He is. I mean, I'm not going to read through it all, obviously, because this isn't...
We haven't got enough beers for that.
Yeah. But his opening line in the introduction was, I didn't need to write such a detailed manifesto. All I need to do is submit up to 1,000 words plus a 300-word version for publication in What's Brewing magazine next month. He then goes on to say that he's got ideas, loads of them, that he wants to get across. And then goes on to talk, and this is an interesting, I didn't know this, CAMRA has more members than the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, the SNP and any political party that doesn't share membership with trade unions. Those members and those ideas deserve a bit of detail. So he sets out his stall.
Well, CAMRA is around about the 200,000 mark these days. And it is still the single biggest consumer group if you're talking about just one product.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I will put a link in the show notes to the full document if you've not seen it, but I'm just going to pull out a few points that I quickly...
First of all, what do you think about him standing?
I think it's great. But I'm saying that having read the manifesto in which he states very, very clearly on a number of occasions that he doesn't want to be on the outside shouting in, he'd rather be on the inside affecting change. Which
is what came out from his original announcement about doing it. He wants to do inside out rather than outside in.
Yeah.
So rather than, just saying, I don't like it and walking away, he is at least going to make an effort. It sounded like, from his post on Thursday, that he's frustrated.
And that comes through
in the manifesto.
The tone of it is a very frustrated one, but then he does go on to put forward a number of proposals and essentially lay out what he's going to do or what he'd like to do.
Okay, so what sort of headlines have we got?
Again, within the introduction, CAMRA's been set in its ways for a long time, but I believe a majority of its membership wants to hit the reset button. I am the reset button. He then goes on to talk about the revitalisation project being a horse design committee and the proposals are camel. I'm not sure I'll get that analogy, but...
Nor do I. It sounds like the Eric Cantona sardines thing. But, I still maintain that 5 years ago, I don't think that revitalisation campaign would have even got off the ground.
No, but he then does go on to say that the average age of the people in the revitalisation project is nearly 53 years old, and it's already taken more than 2.5 years. The changes will already be outdated if and when they ever come into force.
Very frustrated.
Yeah, very frustrated. But I think we had that frustration.
But then, isn't that like any big company?
It is, yeah.
A small company like startups and fintechs, etc., can move really quickly when things change. CAMRA is is there for the members and sort of runs as a membership thing, so they have to vote when things change, and those votes tend to only take place once a year, really. So, but I can still understand his frustration because the revitalisation thing should have got voted last year.
Yeah, I mean, he then does go through the entire executive summary of the revitalisation project. What he's cut, and he says openly he's cut and pasted this, and then he's got handwritten annotations against almost every part of it as well.
Oh, so those are his. Sorry, for the benefit of listeners, I'm looking at Steve's notes, and I thought those were the notes you'd made.
No, these are my notes. This is the actual manifesto that I've got
he's made notes besides all of the revitalisation points.
And then he's dropped it into this document.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
that's quite clever, to be fair.
Just pull out a few of those. First point talks about the members that were asked about the revitalisation project. his first comment is, it depends on which members were asked really. What percentage of the membership do they really represent?
Well, all members were asked.
Okay, that answers that one. I mean, you can answer some of this because...
to be fair, all members had the opportunity to respond, and that was also by mail as well as online, and we all had the opportunity to go to revitalisation meetings as well, so I did go to one of them.
Yeah. He then goes on to say, Camera are there to fight the corner of real ale and pubs, but by learning from its remarkable history and once again becoming relevant, dynamic and radical, which he underlined each of those words and said the proposals are none of these.
But is any company which is 40 years old radical? To be fair, I mean, even our radical punks Brewdog are no longer radical, are they?
That's very true, and a few people.
And they're only 10 years old.
Yeah. And then he digs into the list of proposals that were attached as well. Camera should promote the virtues of well-produced, well-kept, cask-conditioned beer as the pinnacle of the brewer's craft.
I think we highlighted that last week, didn't we?
He's picked that out, and he said how many brewers would actually say that.
Yeah, hardly. Most wouldn't.
Yeah,
I think, to be fair.
He then the whole section about section C. So this is Appendix A, section C of the original revitalisation project. Other types of beer. Camera should seek to promote awareness and understanding of the different factors that contribute to beer quality. And he's commented next to that, how can Camera hope to promote this when it cannot demonstrate that it understands it itself?
That's not an invalid point, to be fair.
Yeah. And like I say, I mean, there are loads of notes in here. He talks about Camera should establish a quality mark.
So something to challenge the cask mark then?
Possibly, yeah. I think...
Because the cask mark is effectively about sellamanship, isn't it?
A committee of Camera members connected with the brewing industry and licensed trade. This is Camera's proposal, and he's written next to it, how this hasn't been done is mind-boggling. Brewers know beer best, which is and this is a lot of that forms the backbone of this. He's saying you've got this organisation which has actually got no beer experts in it. So in terms of the people that know the product the best are the brewers, and they're largely underrepresented in Camera.
That's probably they're underrepresented at the higher levels probably.
Yeah. So he then sets out, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail.
So what's his positive?
So he's got 8 points, which is essentially making his manifesto. So that is rebranding Camera for the future, broadening Camera's scope to recognise and support all formats of beer, integrating brewers into the campaign, improving education on cask ale and cellaring, encouraging diversity in beer styles, design work and membership, modernising our defence of pubs, focus on value not price, and then modernising the campaign. So those are the 8 key areas that he then sets out his recommendations against, and he's got a page for each recommendation.
I think they're all very good recommendations. Anyway, I would like, I think he should just go for the positives though, about what he can bring to it, because he is a brewer.
I think that
successful
is in there.
Brewery.
Yeah.
And I actually like what he's trying to do. I do like the fact that he wants to go from the inside out and try and affect change.
Yeah.
Whether it works or not, I don't know. I mean, I actually have no feel for whether he could make it, because presumably up to this point he's a bit of a Camera member like you and I, apart from the fact that his brewery did win Champion Beer Britain a couple of years ago, but he hasn't been on any other committees and stuff. And generally the way these things work is that you've been on other
to find
committees, but he has probably got quite a following, because I know that as soon as he put out his original post on Thursday, there was quite a few tweets saying I'd vote for you.
Yeah,
but you actually need those people to then vote.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I would recommend that actually that you should read the manifesto and make the decision for yourself, because there are 2 distinct parts to it. There's the first part where it is quite negative in terms of he's pulling apart what's been done with the revitalisation project to date, and then there's the second part around his 8 points that actually says this is what I want to do to change things, and all of those make a lot of sense. What he's saying.
The 8 points are a great starting point,
and they're coming from a brewer's perspective.
True, but I don't think those 8 points get any traction if it wasn't for the revitalisation project, even if it's a few years out of date now.
Yeah, I agree. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Oh yeah, I sincerely hope he gets a lot of traction off of this, because I think it'd be a real kick up the arse.
Yeah, it'd be great to see, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be the change that
it might be the real spur that people need, and also then people saying, "Oh, hold on a second.
Yeah.
This guy evidently must know what he's talking about in certain aspects of it, if not all, because he's brewed a beer, and we all voted for it and said it was brilliant."
It's interesting though, because there was he did put out a tweet today, and I don't know whether you saw it, where he said that he had been contacted by someone senior in camera who had begged him not to publish his manifesto.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't believe someone from camera actually did that. Well, I'm saying that, but because surely they would know that that's going to get out.
Well, exactly. But if it's true,
it's very naive at best.
And why would they?
Don't know. I don't know. That's just that's very frustrating. Isn't it?
But we'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah,
so check out the manifesto.
If people have any comments about it once they've read it, you know, our next regular show is a couple of weeks away.
Yeah,
you've got plenty of time to read it now.
You have, yes, yeah.
So please let us know what you think.
Absolutely. As always, use the hashtag Hopinions. Next news story. This is 2 weeks in a row now we've mentioned Brewdog. We're going to have to stop this. There's a pub in York that are going to have all their Brewdog lines disconnected because Brewdog have been using dispense equipment that's owned by Heineken and Carlsberg and not paying for it, basically.
I've never even thought about this before, if I'm being honest. I've never even thought about who owns the lines and the dispense equipment.
Oh, they're all owned by the breweries.
So they're all owned by big brewery. What about if you're a free house? Do you own your own, or? I
imagine you own your own lines. But when we were
because Heineken own quite a lot of pubs now, don't they?
They do. But when we were up at the Vic before we recorded that show with them,
we were talking about the Guinness ones.
About Guinness lines, and they were saying that they regularly sent in their own technician to service the Guinness line.
Yeah.
So apparently, I'm not going to comment too much on this one because it would appear as though you read this article, nobody wants to actually comment, but it seems as though that the final comment here is anyone who puts a non-Heineken product through the kit is asked to pay a fee for the privilege, and Brewdog is refusing to do so. They don't want Brewdog products going through their kit and intend to disconnect it.
Without knowing all the ins and outs, I'll say from the headline, if it's your equipment, you can say what you like and charge what you like.
Yeah.
I don't think that changes, does it?
No, I don't.
It's the same in any walk of life.
Yeah. Next up, we've got the Cheshire Brewhouse, who we featured back on the Tasting Room episode, where we had the revelation of their 4 beers, and in particular the 2 Govindas. Have launched a crowdfunder project.
All because of us.
All because of us. If you read
it's all because of us. They didn't think about it beforehand.
Yeah.
Apparently, we were so enamoured by their beers, and I bought a case of it, which I almost finished already. I'd finished the last loopy the other night.
Really?
Yeah.
Still going strong. So they're looking to raise £50,000 to provide capability to grow their already respected brand, create a free-to-use community group area, and create employment opportunities. So if that's your sort of thing, again, there'll be a link in the show notes. Head on over, and if you want to fund something that's investing in a small local business to try and help them grow, that are producing some fantastic beers, throw a few quid their way.
I'd quite happily try some of their others.
Yeah, I would. I'd love to try some of their offerings on cask.
Yeah, definitely.
As well. I imagine Shane probably knows how to brew a cask beer.
Yeah, like I think we spoke about it when we had the loopy. Definitely, that felt like cask all over it.
Yes, very much. And then finally, in this week's news, and this was again, this came out quite late on today. It would appear that ABI are up to their old tricks again. They've bought an Israeli beer analytics company by the name of Weissberger. They've bought this company outright in a deal worth $80 million. The company was founded in 2011 and utilises the Internet of Things technology to collect and present real-time information to brewers and bar owners. So it looks like ABI are investing in some more data gathering
after they rate beer.
Yeah.
I just don't know enough about what the company collates. I mean, let's face it. I mean, if I go onto Facebook, they know fairly much where I've been, what I've been up to, and even if it's something I don't feel like I've done overtly, they seem the algorithms within it seem to know. I don't know who uses this information. I mean, if I was looking at, I know we're going to come to Untappd, but I was looking at Untappd for verified venues locally. So it came up with the Vic Inn, obviously, it came up with the Queen Street Brew House, and then it came out with the Edwardstone pub, the one which is basically where Little Earth Project brew their beers. And it had 4 beers, so I thought, that's a brilliant selection. And then it said October 2017. Oh, well, that's shit,
not
isn't it?
up to date, is it? Yeah.
So I wonder how many people actually use this real-time data. I'm presuming probably not even a person uses it.
Well, this says here that the company claims that revenue from every Internet of Things enabled beer tap can be increased by 32% while halving wastage at the same time.
I really don't. I mean, I think if anyone knows a bit more about how this all works, I would love to know, just from an OCD data information thing. But can't see it. But I suppose $80 million for ABI.
They're just not stopping though, are they?
But that's just small change anyway.
Just finding different areas of the market to invest in, aren't they?
This is their venture arm, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the end of this week's news. Can I drink some more beer now?
You can drink some more beer, but you've been sipping it anyway.
I have been sipping it because it's a really drinkable beer.
That sweet toffee caramel has started to die away a little bit as well.
It's becoming. I mean, this is a West Coast IPA.
Yeah.
Through and through, and it's boldly proclaiming that as well. It's not hiding it.
But it's really well balanced. It's not all about the hops.
No, it's not. It's not all, like I say. You do get the caramel of the malts coming through, and then you do get this.
I feel it's West Coast influence, but it's still an English take on it.
Yeah.
I don't mean that disparagingly. Sometimes I do, but this definitely I don't. It's
really
soft, really well balanced.
I like what they've done.
It's got a good mix between the malts and the hops on this one.
Yeah. So since we last had West Berkshire Brew on the show, they've actually expanded. They've opened a new shiny brew house.
Massively expanded, doing Renegade beers, and Yeasty Boys are there.
And they've taken on the contract for Yeasty Boys as well. We've now got Renegade beers in cans, as well as keg taps, and they're still doing their more traditional West Berkshire,
like the good old boy
cask brews as well. Yeah. So it's great to see since their appearance on the Hopinions podcast, they've gone from strength to strength. It seems to be a bit of a theme.
It does seem to be a bit of a theme. Cheshire Brew House are doing the crowdfunding after being on the show.
Yeah.
West Berkshire expand just by talking to us.
That's it. That's so all you need to know is get on our podcast, and the world is your oyster. Yeah, absolutely. So shall we dig into this week's discussion?
Opinions.
So we asked this week, and this was part of our revisited theme for this week's show. We wanted to go back and have another discussion about Untappd.
Yep.
So when we first did this, it was almost a year ago. Just over a year ago.
Probably over a year ago, because it coincided with us going up to Manchester to go and see Steve at B&O to do the coffee special with Roland at Has Been, and go to the Manchester Winter Beer Festival. Oh yeah, and to speak to Ross and the other one.
Yeah, Tom. Being Omicron. Yeah. So that was back on episode 17 of our podcast, and then there was a part 2 on being Omicron as well, where we looked at the 10 Untappd Commandments, and we went through those. And the question we asked then was, does social media, including Untappd, encourage healthy drinking to maintain social interaction? which is slightly different to the question that we've asked this time. So this time we asked, has your use of Untappd changed since you first started using it? 269 votes, 48% of people, so almost half, said no. The other two were yes at 23%, and 29% have stopped using it altogether in the last year. So that's quite high.
Almost a third.
Yeah, quite a high percentage. So, and we'll come back to that as we go through it. So, also this week though, there were a couple of other polls that were run across Twitter,
which was sort of Untappd related,
that did lend themselves to what we was talking about. So, particularly in relation to that question that we asked last year, in terms of does social media encourage unhealthy drinking to maintain social interaction, Pete McCary ran a poll this week saying a question for beer industry professionals and bloggers, podcasters, etc.
Are we not professional then? Are we different from beer professionals?
I quite like being labelled as a podcaster.
I was just asking a question.
Still niche at the moment. We're professional podcasters. Professionally amateur.
Yeah, definitely the latter.
Yeah. So Pete was asking, did you always drink at higher than average levels, or did your level of drinking increase markedly once you became involved in beer? Now, Pete's two options were, I always drank like this and my drinking has increased. 59% of people went for my drinking has increased, as opposed to 41% for I always drank like this. Where did you put yourself on that particular poll?
I think I voted my drinking hasn't increased, but I commented. Basically, I think my quantity has gone down, as in just sheer volume. It would be more a case of going out, staying out, and drinking volume.
Yeah.
And I would say now it's more about, most of the time, because there'd be plenty of people who can pick me up on this one at some point, but it'd be more about probably having better beers, but less of it. So I reckon net, it probably comes out the same. Hard to tell, because I probably drink more beers at home now than I used to, because beers at home, there didn't seem too much point, because it'd be just like Stella, Kronenberg, Guinness, whatever the macro of choice of the bars I was going to at the time. So I reckon in my head I was a bit of a net on that one. What was yours?
I definitely went for my drinking has increased.
Okay.
Because I think it has, but that could be possibly as a result of just discovering how much beer is actually available and wanting to try and drink it all.
Also, there's probably other factors as well. I mean, different stages of our lives. 6 years ago, your kids were a lot younger.
Yeah.
So naturally, you probably go out a little bit less as well. Where you work, I work in London, so I can go volume and macro as much as I like, to as many bars and places that stay open late as often as I want. Especially working for, working in the city, there's plenty of places you can find. But I think there's lots of different factors. But I think that's quite an honest answer from you there, Steve.
I think it's just a fact. It's just increased.
Do you think it's good, bad, indifferent? If that was a follow-up poll,
it's probably not good for you, is it?
Well, it depends. If you started off on zero, then increase wouldn't make any difference, would it?
No, I suppose not. Any increase is going to be an increase, isn't it? Yeah.
So it does. Again, that's where just numbers sometimes don't tell you everything, do they?
Yeah.
It's a bit like when there's been recently a lot of discussions about, is GDPR a worthwhile measurement of economic prosperity? And it was sort of built at the time of manufacturing and doesn't really work that well for services, which is where a lot of countries get their income from and dominate, etc. So depends where your starting point is, Steve.
I can say that, and I think it's interesting because in relation to the question that we asked last year, what we were saying was, has Untappd increased your drinking?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to chase the next check-in and the next badge and all the rest of it. So quite timely from Pete there, which quite grateful for.
So I'm presuming Pete's going to be writing a one-page, concise blog at some point.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope he follows that up with something.
Hopefully this is a very unsubtle hint for Pete.
Yes, yeah, because we'd love to see what the follow-up to that was. Then the other poll that was run this week was actually by the owner of Untappd, so Greg Avola. He put out a question saying, what's your number one reason for not checking in your beer on Untappd? And gave 4 options. So he gave process too complicated, festival or with friends, forget to check in, or offline, or a slow internet. Now the highest percentage on that was forgot to check in at 53%, 22% offline, slow internet, 20% at a festival or with friends, and 5% of the process is too complicated. Now I found that really interesting, in bearing in mind where we're going to go with our discussion shortly, because quite a lot of the comments that we had back suggested that a reason for not using Untappd was actually because they're with friends and they want to actually focus on socialising rather than be on their phone.
But I think from Greg's point of view, only having 5% because of the process is a good answer.
It's what he was probably looking for.
Yeah, because what he wanted to know was, is the app user friendly?
Yeah.
And
I also wonder whether with the offline one, whether he's looking at there's any way of doing offline check-ins that when you're back online
it just automatically happens.
Yeah.
Like when you send a message on WhatsApp or text and it uploads.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be. But I thought, again, I didn't see that one. I didn't know about it till you mentioned it today. Yeah, I think there's some interesting numbers there. How many votes did he get?
Nearly 1,500.
Okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Bit more than we get.
That's right, Greg.
Yeah. Before we get into listener feedback and feedback from the folks on Twitter, you've just drained the rest of your snake oil. Take it you enjoyed that then?
Yeah, I really loved it actually. I do forget sometimes how much I enjoy a really well balanced West Coast influence dipper. So I don't actually know how easy they are to come about these days.
You know what it's reminding me of? It's a little bit like resin, but not as thick and sticky.
Yeah. It's like resin if you get it just right at Wetherspoons when they've got it just in.
It's like resin light.
Yeah. No, it's probably on record more than once. We're pretty big fans of resin, to be fair.
I think so, and I think we've seen Matt consume his fair share of resin. I wonder whether he's had any input into the recipe. It needs to taste like that.
Yeah. He just turned up with a green can with spoons one day. Said it must taste like resin. Where were you last night? I got resins with Martin and Steve. That's a really good shout, actually. And I'll put that down as quite a big compliment if they've managed to do it, and they've knocked 3% off it. Because resin is closer to 9-10%.
It's 9.
So 2,
I think.
So 2.5% they've knocked off, and still got a really good flavour.
And they've put it in a bigger can.
And it is a big can because the resin is it a 330 or is it a little bit smaller?
It's a little bit smaller. It's one of
those really narrow cans, isn't it?
Yeah. I think they might be 330 actually. They're just taller, aren't they?
Yeah, it could be like those sometimes when they do the special release coats, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout actually. Yeah, resin-like, and that is a compliment.
Yes, very much so.
And what do you think of the design?
I quite like the branding actually. Very simple, silver can, wraparound label, black and red.
Fairly striking.
Yeah, it'd stand out on the shelf, wouldn't it?
Yeah, especially the red eyes on the snake as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. As we can say, because I've drained it and you're almost finished.
Well, I wasn't allowed to drink because I had to.
You know what you're like if you have a dipper.
I know. I've had to try and slow myself down. So why I drink, you can talk a little bit. So before we get into our listener views, how has your use of Untappd changed in the last year?
I would say by and large it's fairly much the same. So most people who listen to the show will know that I'm fairly religious about checking my beers. Either at the time, day after, or whenever.
You check every fucking thing in. Everything.
And I'm happy with that. That's not a problem for me. I'm more than happy to check in every beer because primarily it's my record for me. That's my record. If you have a cannonball, you check in every cannonball.
That's right. Because I want to stay at the top of the cannonball.
Exactly. But that's no different. I just happen to do it for all the beers.
Okay.
So Clayton always checks in Citra because he was and probably still is top of the chart for Oakham Citra. I just choose to do it for all my beers, whatever it might be, however good, however bad, however many times.
Because you've then got that permanent record.
I do have a permanent record. There's a lot of times if it's the same beer, I don't comment, and that's not the same as last year. But sometimes if I have, say, something which just knocks out of the park, like we had Cannonball a few months ago at the Art House on keg, and it was tasting fantastic.
Which is amazing, yeah.
And we went, it's back to its best. And I think we both commented on it. It might have been just the word banging.
Yeah.
But it was, it just reminds you that at that point in time, in that place, because you can check the venue in and the dispense method, it was tip top. However, the biggest change for me, and this has been some time in coming, is early this year I give a 5 out of 5.
Stop the press.
I know. And what was stopping the press? Shall I open a beer?
Yeah,
that revelation.
I'm just like, I can't believe that you finally gave something a 5.
Do you know what it was? I was sitting there having the aforementioned Oakham Citra, and I was in the Spoons in Milton Keynes visiting my parents, and I'd already been to the Draft House earlier in Milton Keynes, had a few different beers, all nice, but nothing had really grabbed me. Went into Spoons and saw Citra on. I went, okay, well that's what I'm having. I didn't actually see it. I couldn't tell you what else was on, because that was all I'd seen was the Citra. And I had 1 pint, I had 2 pints, I had 3 pints, I had 4 pints, I had 5 pints of 4.2% Oakham Citra on cask. And I thought, if I'm going to have 5 pints, how can I not give it more than the 4 out of 5 it was currently sitting on my Untappd? So if I'm willing to either go up to the bar, or every time my dad, my mum, my brother ask me what do you want, and I'm going Citra, and they're used to me saying, oh, hold on a second, I'll go have a little look, see what else there is. How can it not be a 5?
So did you factor into that like smashability then, or sessionability?
Everything. It was, and again, there's a couple of Spoons in Milton Keynes. For a couple of listeners who know Milton Keynes, it'll be the one closer to the station, near where Chiquitos used to be, the nicer of the 2 Spoons in my opinion, and it was tasting bang on. It felt like it was on quite soon, because they didn't have, in that particular Spoons, they had the prices on each one, and that one didn't have the price. But there was no reason to assume it wasn't the same price as all the others.
Yeah.
So it felt like it had been there recently, and it was on it felt like I was having a sweet spot moment, because it just went. And it was almost one of those things. I was chatting to my brother, my mum and dad, and the glass was empty again. It was one of those nights where if someone in the family hadn't said, should we go and get some food, I probably would have gone to pint 6, 7 and 8, I reckon. And I thought, this has got to be worth a 5 then.
It's interesting that you had that moment of...
Yeah, I think just because I was sessioning the same beer, and there's so often I do go out, like a lot of us, and go, I'll have 1 beer, I'll have something else.
Rather than just hit that 1 beer that's, I'm just going to drink.
Go, it's brilliant every time. And it was. And that was my, okay. And I think I messaged you and said I'd given a 5, or I'm about to give a 5 out of 5. And after you'd recovered from that moment, I've done it once since as well. Again, a cask beer, and a beer I mentioned earlier, the Jack brand Mosaic, because again I had it on cask at the pub near work, and again I didn't look at anything else. I just went, I'll have another pint of that please, when someone said. And maybe for me it might always be cask, I'm thinking, because of that sessionability and smashability.
Because you are the mayor of casks, Phil.
Well, I haven't got all the badges yet, but we'll get to badge rankery later.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you say, you did message me, and I think my instant reply to you was, we are definitely revisiting our Untappd discussion.
Well, I think you said about time first of all.
Yeah. and then it was.
And then you went, we're revisiting. Yeah. But before we move on, obviously we've opened a beer.
We have. Well, you opened it.
Yeah. So this again is a brewery that has been featured more than once, and we've both had this beer before.
We have.
I've just had a little smell, and it smells delightful.
Okay. Cheers. Oh God,
that smells
that
lovely.
Smells really good.
Because I've already had a smell, I'll let you sniff for a little while. So Elusive Brewing from Andy. I'm not even going to say the rest of it. The nicest bloke, etc. So this is Invisible Wall Imperial Milk Stout with bourbon soaked cocoa nibs and coffee. Comes in at 8.2%. And the aroma is absolutely beautiful.
The aroma's stunning. It's the first thing I thought when I put it to my nose. The first thing that came into my head was Common Grounds.
Oh, I can get that. The original, or the Kentucky?
The original. That has got the same aroma as Common Grounds in terms of coffee profile in there.
Oh yeah, because I did have a little look before we had this beer, and we had this 2.5 years ago, I think now, in the first year of Essex Bottle Share. And I've just written coffee with some burnt notes.
Well, interesting. Yeah, it was November 2015, and I wrote massive coffee aroma feel and finish, slight hint of booze.
I'd say that at the moment, not getting much of that booze.
No. Now, interestingly, while we're on the revisited and the history of this beer, I think I've had a number of variations of this beer prior to that as well.
But when you were still hungry?
Yeah, so in December 2013, Andy sent me a bottle of homebrew that was simply entitled BA Imperial Stout, which I'm led to believe was this recipe, the forerunner of this.
And what did you think of that?
This recipe. I didn't really write a lot about it, hence I've not made notes about it.
Okay.
But I think I gave it a 3.5, 4, something like that. So even as a home brewer, that was a big score, because in December 2013 you could have only rated in halves as well.
True.
So
you would have struggled to do the leap from 3.5 to 4 anyway.
Yeah, and then in 2014 at Indie Man in October, I checked in a bourbon vanilla bean pumpkin pie impy stout from Andy, which I believe was another variation of this. Again, very highly rated. I think I simply checked in amazing.
Pumpkin.
Didn't get any of that. You got the bourbon and vanilla. Not so much of the pumpkin. And then also that bottle that we had at the bottle share in November 2015, we then had a version of that on a former previous homebrew special on the Beer O'Clock show, which was homebrew special number 6, episode 127 of the Beer O'Clock show, which was the homebrew special where we made 3 brewers brew dark beers that had orange flavour in them as well. So I had an orange version of this. So I think I've actually had this beer.
You've had quite a lot of iterations of this beer then.
I think this is the 5th time I've had this beer, or a version of this beer, and this I'm not sure if this is the first time it's been commercially available or not. It may well be.
Okay. So the one we had in November 2015 wasn't commercially available?
No, because I checked my Untappd and I actually put a picture with it as well, and it had literally a white sticky label on it with handwritten notes on it. It said Invisible Wall, and then said what it was.
I mean, I have to admit, this is smooth.
It is, and we're again. Andy gave this to us for free, so we are very, very grateful to Andy for the beer.
Yeah, and thank you to Matt for muling it.
Absolutely.
That is so smooth. That is lovely.
That's beautiful. I'm gonna.
There's a little. I haven't poured all of it, but I think it's worth savouring. But it would be easy not to savour it.
8.2%. Again, it's not tasted its ABV.
No.
I don't know whether we've just been well lined by the 7.5% snake oil at this point.
No, I think if we'd had that first, we would have said exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And even the snake oil might actually have felt a bit more boozy after that.
Possibly.
If anything else.
Yeah.
So the other way that I've changed my use of Untappd is using the verified venues a bit more.
Okay.
So as was mentioned previously a few months ago, I went to Amsterdam with my mates, and as a listener of the show and friend Carl pointed out, I made him carry round the 80 Beers in Amsterdam book. As it turned out, I ended up using the verified venues bit on Untappd, and it worked out really well. And there's one little place which we found, which was, I could have stayed in there the whole evening. The only thing they were lacking was a decent vodka and orange for one of the guys who I was with. And I actually said to the guy there, I said, look, we found you purely because of the Untappd verified venues. And he was actually quite chuffed to know. He said, it's not that cheap, so it's quite nice to know it brings people in. And it's really handy. It brings up the places nearby, it gives you the beer lists and links you to Google Maps, and you can find your way there. And that's the other thing I've been using it for. So probably the two big changes for me are the scoring, which is a big personal development for me. And the other thing is using the Untappd verified venues, which I've actually found incredibly useful. What about yourself?
Well, I think one of mine is going to be around the scoring, and that's that I started using quarter marks. But I think literally we recorded that crossover with Beernomicon, and then we went to the Manchester Beer Festival, and I think the first beer I checked in I used a quarter mark on just because it was like I felt liberated and I felt as I could do
you were free.
Yeah, but no, it certainly has given me more variety in my rating in terms of, because I probably rate more freely than you do anyway, and I'm often in the 4.5, 5 marks, and the quarter mark is that 4.75 has been a revelation for me between something being 4.5 and something being 5, and it just not being a 5.
It does give you optionality, because I messaged, I said it before, I messaged Untappd to say why isn't there quarter marks, and their first answer was, well, there's 10 variations on scoring, so why do you need the other ones? But obviously enough people came back to them and said, look, it's probably that, I think it was probably always that 3.5 to 4, which I think prompted the quarter marks. In my head, that's where it is, because I think before that and after that you've got average, and then you've got, oh, these are getting good. I reckon it was that 3.75 mark that prompted the quarter percentage.
Yeah. It's been a revelation for me though, and I frequently use the scale now.
See, told you would.
I know. The other one, and this has been my biggest use of Untappd in the last year, and I think this was possibly as part of some of the changes they made to the app as well, was just the loose use of lists on there as well. So I've got my entire cellar and levels of my cellar as lists on Untappd. Yeah, I've got one called Deep in the Cellar, and I've got one called For a Bit Longer. Just leave for a bit longer.
For a bit longer.
And so I've just got all these things, and any new beer I buy, and I'm a little bit obsessive about it, it gets scanned in or it gets checked in, it gets put on a list. So it's there, so when I come round to drinking it, I've not got to search it, I can just go into one of my lists because I know it's already there.
I do like the list thing, but I'll come back to that later.
Yeah. And then the other one is, again, it's kind of around what you were saying earlier in terms of trying to check in all of my beers, and I've started doing that, but I don't necessarily always push them to Twitter. So if it's something that's just another check-in of a beer that I'm always drinking, that I've actually not got anything new to say about, I'll actually turn off the little blue push.
Actually, that's a good point. I've started doing that. Because it's auto set to do that, sometimes I forget.
Yeah.
But recently I bought a case of wild beer fresh, because it had the old branding on it, and it was a fairly decent price. And I've had a few of those recently, and I think probably over half of the ones I haven't pushed, because it was like I was having the same beer within half an hour of having the beer before.
There's no point, is there?
No, I had nothing new to say about it, and there was definitely no new pictures.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got a couple of comments of people that have definitely changed their usage of Untappd. So first up is regular contributor to the show, Joe Hill at Multiplex Rant, who says, and this was a series of tweets, I used to just use it to record unique check-ins. Now I check in stuff multiple times. It's interesting to see how my tastes have changed or how beers have aged. Also, my scoring is probably more generous now, lots more in the 4.5 to 5 range. P.S. The peculiar snobbery towards Untappd gets my goat a bit. It's this daft straw man argument that Untappd users are all crazed tickers incapable of human interaction. Nonsense. It's a useful, fun way of keeping track of the beers you've had. That's it.
I can't disagree with anything Joe's just said.
It's like you could have said that.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
That could easily have been me writing all of that. So yes, Joe, I completely agree with you. And it's fairly much how I use Untappd.
Yeah.
I've also got more generous.
I think there's elements in there of how I use Untappd as well. I think he's summed it up quite nicely there. Next up, number one fan, Miles Lambert. My perception of it has totally changed. I started using it to keep a record of what I was drinking. It was that simple. At that point, I didn't think anyone would ever be bothered about my opinion of a beer. Roll the clock forward 3 years and it's very different. I now feel extra pressure, admittedly of my own making, to give a full and fair review of beers I tap in. There are many times where I simply can't be bothered to have to think too much about it. Sometimes I just want to enjoy a pint, so I often don't check beers in.
I thought Miles had made a New Year's resolution that he was going to do what I did and tap in every beer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm sure Miles can correct me because I'm sure he'll know better than me whether he tweeted it or not. But I thought that the same weekend that I did my first 5 out of 5, he had written that he was going to check in all these beers. So I'd be interested to know what's changed.
Maybe he's feeling the pressure of now being a podcaster as well.
I know. Pressure's on.
And the added pressure that comes with...
As a few other people have mentioned.
Yes, yeah, very much so. And then the final one here was from, and I love this one, Drink, Drank, Drunk at Drink, Drank blog. Yes, when I first downloaded, I only used it occasionally. Now I check in almost every beer I drink. I put that down to my drinking more, wanting a record of the more unusual, rare, one-off stuff I drink, and listening to you two go on about it all the time.
Go on.
Don't know if we go on about it all the time.
Only every other show, come on.
Yeah. I also think the new features they introduced last year, cask keg, taster, etc. was helpful. I'm more likely to use it when I'm out and about or on holiday with new beers and new venues rather than just drinking Gamma Ray at home.
Isn't that quite interesting? Because there'll be other comments later on which sort of do the opposite of that.
Yeah.
As well. So, I mean, I have to admit, I do love the dispense method option.
I do, but we're gonna come on to that later on, or
I don't know specifically, but just out there at the moment, I love it.
It's a thing that I like about it because certainly it helped us when we
did the list earlier.
Well, did the list earlier, and also when we did the beers of the year for last year.
Yeah, definitely.
We'd used Untappd to track all of that and would have it all on a spreadsheet and keep track of what we were drinking and what were the beers in a month and all the rest of it. You couldn't have done that 12 months ago because that option wasn't there.
No, it's quite weird. When I was flicking through to get some of my stats for this show tonight, and suddenly dispense method bit just disappeared.
Yeah.
Like, what? Oh yeah, that didn't exist. Forgotten about that.
Yeah, so it was if you had wanted to attract that, it would have been down to your own initiative to have written it in the check-in. Yeah. And then you would have had to have set up some filter to find all of
my only ones, so say I go back to something we were discussing at, say, Ghost Ship, would be where I had it. So if it was in certain pubs...
And that would give you an indicator.
It's cask. If I haven't put anything in, there's a good chance it was at home. And if it's on a train, it was can.
Because train beer.
Train beer.
Yeah. So, before we get into the 10 Untappd Commandments again and revisit some of these and see if our thoughts have changed and what listeners have got to say about it, let's go back to the Invisible Wall. What are you thinking?
It's bloody fantastic, isn't it?
Yes, it is really good.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how new. So this beer was bottled in December 2017, and it says best before December 2020, which sort of implies there's still more to come from this beer.
Yeah.
Which means I'm quite disappointed that the only beer I've got of this is the one we're sharing right now, because this is tasting fantastic. Because normally you associate this kind of beer when it's quite fresh as having that sort of bit of a boozy burn, and then you think couple of years or 18 months down the line it's going to ease off a little bit. I can't see where this is going to get better. I'm really struggling.
I mean, as it is right now, it's balanced. All of the flavours are in there. There is this deep dark bitterness that
Tell you what,
finishes on.
tell you what, I'm not getting any more. Is that roasted notes?
No, that's gone. Getting a lot more of the sweetness from the milk stout edge of it as well. It's a little bit sweet at the end.
You feel like there's almost a little bit of lactose in it.
Yeah, you're getting that. You're actually getting that. But it's just finishing so easy.
Yeah.
It's actually coating the mouth.
Yeah.
As well on the finish.
Not cloying. It's that sort of coating which goes, you need to have more.
It's that oily sort of coffee coating that you get, that oiliness from coffee.
And it sort of hangs around the side of the glasses beautifully as well.
It's just an incredible.
Your common grounds analogy wasn't misplaced.
Yeah, I mean that for me.
And that's a big compliment.
That's got to be a massive compliment for Andy's skill there as a brewer to have produced a beer that smells like, personally, what I think is one of the best coffee beers in the UK at the moment. Okay, so going back into the Untappd Commandments, the first one that we had last year was I am the Lord of Badge Wankery. So this included things like specific check-ins for a badge, push into Twitter and Facebook and check-ins, just general check-ins. So a few comments here. James at Gammon Baron, it was fun being a badge wanker. It certainly made me try different styles for better or worse. Retrospective badges have taken the sheen off. It's a useful tool for finding beers or where to find somewhere decent to drink in an unknown place. Have retrospective badges taken the sheen off for you?
They're a bit of an odd one because sometimes I don't notice they've done that whole badge release thing.
Unless you've seen the blog.
Unless you've seen the blog, and you can quite easily miss it. But I do still like a badge. For me, getting a badge is still a bit like getting that shiny sticker when you were collecting football stickers.
I still love a badge.
So, and especially now, if you get anything more than one.
Yeah.
If suddenly I get a 2, or very occasionally that triple badge, I will actually go, oh, badge, and I could be in the room on my own.
Yeah, I'm going through that awkward phase at the moment where I've just introduced Angela to Untappd.
Oh, she's getting all the badges.
And she's like 3 or 4 badges every check-in, and I'm literally sitting there going, didn't get a badge. 4 beers later, didn't get a badge.
Oh, I get the opposite though. Every now and again, I get badges and Michelle doesn't, and she goes, "Why have you got a badge?" Because as far as she's concerned, if I'm getting a badge, she must at least get 1, if not 2. I just go, "Have you got that? How did that happen?" It's probably because sometimes it might be like a Belgian beer, and I've had 3 or 4 of those recently, and I've just got that 5th one on the time when we're sharing one beer. And but yeah, she will get triple badges every now and again. It's like, oh, okay.
So the badges are still quite an important part of it for you?
I like it. It's probably a twofold thing. One, it's the okay, so I've had X amount of that style, and the other thing is that childish bit. Like I said about collecting football badges and football stickers. I used to love getting that shiny football sticker. Interestingly
though, I've stopped pushing my badges to Twitter. I only now push my check-ins. I've turned my badge pushings off.
Oh, I haven't turned mine off. No, I've left mine on. Why did you turn yours off?
I don't know. I kind of felt as though it wasn't because of criticism, because I'm way above that. But I think I was looking at it, and I think that there are times when, particularly the day after bottle share, when I'm checking my beers in, I don't push those to Twitter either, because I'm still not a fan of the whole, I was drinking this last night so I'm pushing it now. And I think what was happening was I was getting badges, and the badges were pushing but my check-ins weren't, and I was like, oh no, I don't want my badges to push because they're
not related to something else.
Yeah.
But then that probably happens at home sometimes, doesn't it? When you turn off the blue marker for Twitter, every now and again a badge probably goes through anyway.
Well, no, because my badge pushings are turned off now.
So you turn? Oh no,
so my badges just pushed to Untappd now.
I want everyone to know I've got a badge.
On the badge front, so this is a great one from Miles Lambert, and I think that this sums up badge wankery perfectly. My use has become more savvy. For example, it's the Super Bowl tonight. I'm naturally thinking there's bound to be a badge for that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but then yes, I did get a Super Bowl badge.
Of course, you always know big events in America. There's always going to be a badge for that.
Yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
What was the big event?
Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Couple of other things on this one. So Richard Swindell's at Rich Swin said, I'm quite tech savvy and have struggled with some of the features. Useful for crowdsourced reviews if you're looking for something to try. I do feel a bit exposed adding tasting notes, but it's only my opinion. Next person might think differently. Isn't that the point? That I think that's a great comment.
I think it's a very good comment because I think Michelle's thought about that every now and again when she writes something, because she knows it's then going to go through to Twitter, and she's every now and again she sort of checks something, and I've gone, it's what you think. It's what you.
It's your view.
It's what you think the beer is. What does it remind you of? There isn't anything wrong or right, unless you're going to just go, which is evidently it could have been just go, it's shit. You know, if that's all you're going to do, then yeah, you could be called up on it. But if you're just giving an honest assessment about the beer you're having, and yeah, I mean, I'm not very eloquent when I do my notes when it goes through. But I always hope that people understand what I'm saying. And I think that's all you can do.
Yeah. I've always thought of it as a bit of a discussion starter as well.
And every now and again, people do then start to come back, don't they?
Yeah, because you could check in a beer and you could say something about a beer, and then someone can come back and say, well, it didn't taste like that when I had it.
Yeah.
And then actually you get into a bit of discussion of, well, did I have a bad batch?
Or was it you who had the bad batch?
Or did you have a bad batch?
Or
did one of us have a really fresh one?
Yeah, or did one of us just get lucky?
Yeah.
You can have some quite interesting chats off the back of it sometimes.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's definitely not a wrong or right thing, but I do understand what he's saying. I mean, I don't think I really thought about it too much at the start, because again, going back to 2013, I wasn't really aware so much about how much people may or may not come back about it.
I think it's grown, and it continues to grow.
Definitely.
As well. Certainly in the beer community that we live in.
Yes.
Untappd is kind of the benchmark.
Yeah.
Final one on this one was from Minister of Food and Drink at _Mofad. Nope. Always used it to keep track of what I've tried. Easy to use, easy to do just that. One of my favourite apps.
Okay. I mean, well, I suppose just to be clear, we're both Untappd supporters, aren't we?
We are, yeah. We pay a monthly fee to...
Which is at the moment almost currently $1 to the pound.
Yeah, well, I don't know, it's ranged between, certainly in this last year, it's ranged between £3 and £4.5 quid a month, which is the price of a pint.
Yeah. Oh, I'm happy with it because I love the stats.
Yeah, and I think when I signed up to it, it didn't have the financial backing that it's got now either. So I felt as I was supporting the development of that app.
Yeah, I became a supporter before they had any sort of buy-in as well from the venture capitalists.
Plus there's a badge for being a supporter.
There is that as well.
you get it on your supporter.
Which I think is, again, going back to Miles, didn't he do that on the beery night?
To bring in that 7 badger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was his top-up one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to become a supporter now.
That just pushed him over. Yeah. So, yeah, the badges are just a bit of fun, though, aren't they?
For me, yeah.
Yeah.
I like them.
Undeniably, you can't argue.
No.
Yeah.
And every now and again, if you're if I'm there with a mate and you get a few badges, you sort of take the piss out of each other. Don't take it too seriously, is what I say.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's been times in the past where we've had nights. I know we don't do it so much anymore, bottle share, because generally we're moving to a point where most people will leave their check-ins until after the event. So the phones are generally in your pocket, you're making notes. But there were times in the past where we were checking in where we've done fines on the evening. If you've got a badge, you've had to put £1 in the pot, and then we've had a pot at the end of the evening to buy more beer with, which has always been a bit fun.
I think there was one night, it was quite a lot, wasn't it?
It at least got to about 20-25 quid.
Yeah, just on badges.
Yeah. So while I've been going through that, we've finished the Invisible Wall. Do you have any final comments on that you haven't already covered?
I have nothing else to add apart from immensely drinkable beer.
Very well put together.
A lot of Andy's beers recently have been, the ones I've had have been all very similar. That's one of the first dark beers I've had from him for a long time.
I think Andy has hit a real groove at the moment in terms of consistency and output. He's probably nailing that at the moment.
He's flying at the moment.
Yeah.
He's flying at the moment, and that's an excellent example of the fact that at the moment he's fairly much, I can do this.
Yeah, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Well done, Andy, and thanks for the beer if you're listening, mate.
Shame there's only one.
Yeah. Let's not be too ungrateful.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I had to say that again. Thanks, Andy.
So I've just poured the next beer, which is from Siren.
Again, another beer which we had on the show, wasn't it?
This was on episode 31 of Hopinions.
So this is the Siren Craft Brewed Acid Jam, and this comes in at 9.7%. So this is one of their sour offerings, isn't it?
It's an imperial kettle sour,
which is quite a mouthful to say. And I can't really remember what we said about it at the time, so this will be quite interesting.
Well, I can tell you, because I did listen back to that show to get our views on it. We thought it was, on the nose, very reminiscent of a young vintage ale or barley wine. It was very complex on the flavour, didn't drink its ABV. I'm not going to give any of the actual tasting notes in case it influences us. But
okay, that's a good idea.
I'll come back to that. So let's give it a go from the certainly from the aroma point of view. I still get that barley wine characteristic.
Something else there.
I think this possibly reminiscent of what you pulled out with one of the beers on the last show of Rodenbach. It's a little bit.
Got that sort of
hints
flavour.
Of that, yeah.
Quite enjoying that flavour though.
Well, a few months hasn't hurt that, has it? I mean, what was that? That was June last year we did that, so that's another 6 months on.
Don't say anything about the tasting notes yet still, because your Rodenbach thing wasn't a bad shout.
Definitely on the nose.
Yeah.
So while you're exploring that, let's go through a couple more of these commandments. So commandment 2 was thou shalt not check in sips, which I know at the time was quite the discussion point on that podcast.
Because Ross and Tom were talking about how they sort of
talking or arguing.
Well, it's much the same thing for them.
I'm sure there was a lot of telling each other to fuck off.
To be fair, that's the only way they communicate.
Yeah. But yeah, was it not one of them? I think it was Tom would have a sip of someone's beer and he'd check it in.
Yeah.
And we thought that was wholly wrong.
No, I still think it's wrong.
I do. And so a few of the points that this covered was: do sips count? What's the smallest possible measure that you feel as though you can check in? And should you have had to have paid for a beer to be able to check it in? Now, obviously, with the addition of a tasting measure on Untappd,
which obviously came after we'd spoken about this.
Probably
because we had spoken about it, I assume.
What do you consider a tasting measure? What do you is there a minimum pour size
I was trying to think about that, because if you go to some bars and you ask for a taster, you get the most pathetic amount of beer that you really can't tell from that taster that it's a beer. Sometimes they put it in such a small measuring glass, like, well, I've got no hope of telling what it's like. I don't know. What's the Essex bottle share, which is obviously where we have most of our tasters.
Yes.
Let's be honest. Roughly, what would you say we end up with?
It's difficult to put an actual on average. I reckon it averages out to about 80 to 90 mil.
Because 100 mils would be probably a bit too generous if there's 9 or 10 of us there. Because a 750 bottle is the average vessel.
It is. Somebody would have had to have bought 2 bottles of 500 mil.
Yeah.
Between the 10 of us
to get 100 each.
Yeah, which is a decent sized pour.
Your 80 to 90 is probably the upper end of our taster.
Yeah.
And we've spoken about this as well, but sometimes you don't also get the maximum amount of beer from the taster. I would say that our shares at bottle share are probably there or thereabouts, but again, I'll revert back to a conversation I had in Dublin the year before last with some friends of mine, and I was chatting to the guy at the bar, and he'd offered me a few tasters. They were fairly decent tasters actually, probably more than I'd get at bottle share. And I went back and I was chatting to a few of the friends, and one of them said, "Have you checked those in?" I said, "Oh no," because he just offered them to me. It was just part of my process. And he said, "Well, why not?" And I thought, "Fuck, I've got no answer to that question," because it wasn't a formal tasting.
Yeah, see, I think that's where I draw the line. I wouldn't check in a beer that I'd asked for a taster of.
Yeah.
I'll check in a beer that I've shared a beer review with, or shared a beer at Bottle Share with, and at Bottle Share I do check them in as tasters, and that's got nothing to do with the fact there's now a badge for tasting. At all. But I do check them in as tasters, because I don't think when you're sharing a beer between that many people, you can't check in that you've had a bottle of it.
So what's your thoughts about the beer?
I'm loving it, actually, and I think I remember last time that I did quite enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really subtle sourness. It's almost like Haribo sour sweets.
It's not even that much, and it's still got a feel of a barley wine.
Yeah, it's definitely got it
to it.
I think it's really unusual. It's probably, looking at it, probably shouldn't work.
No, because it's also been barrel aged in bourbon and red wine barrels,
which I think both of those come through as well. The bourbon definitely comes through.
And you get the red wine, and you get some of those tannins in there from the red wine for sure.
It's a really unusual mix.
Yeah, but it does work.
Somehow it works.
Yeah.
So I gave it a 4 out of 5 previously.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know.
I'm not sure I was that generous, but I will double check. Of course, that's what the great thing about Untappd.
And speaking of rating system, thou shall make full use of the rating system, which, as we've discussed, you now use the quarter marks.
I do.
Having been liberated in Manchester last year.
I was, and it was a wonderful feeling as well. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, in here we've got a few comments that maybe necessarily aren't directly related to the rating system, but that they were very much in terms of using the system as it is.
Yeah.
So the Owl Lady said it's still the only log of beers that I've had that I've got, and it's handy. Which I don't think anyone would disagree with that. And then we've got Beer First at Beer First Show, which is a podcast from the US, and it's great that we've got podcasts from across the sea talking to us. We use it on our podcast as a way to convey what we think as a group. Personally, though, I rarely use it when I'm at a local bar or brewery.
I would have loved for him to expand that comment, to be honest.
Yeah. There'll be a test to see if they actually listen to the show. And then we've got Beer Frontiers at Beer Frontiers. Was using it to track my 500 beers in a year. Now it's primarily to keep a record of what I liked and didn't like, so I'm technically going to go with a yes. Steve Remington at Steve Remington. It's record keeping for me. Time, place and beer allows me to reject duds that I've tasted before. The good ones I tend to remember. I have zero interest in badges, but that's the same as how I've always used it.
Fair enough.
It is. That's a great one though, isn't it? That uses it to reject dodgy beers that he's had before.
Yeah, I've made the mistake of not doing that. I've gone for a beer and gone, oh shit, I've had this before.
There's been a couple of times where I've been unsure. So I've looked at Untappd, and then I've seen that I've had it, and I've seen that I've scored it low, and I've been like, yeah, you're not getting a second go. If a beer ever comes in under 2.5 for me,
don't have it.
It's never getting another go. Never getting.
I think that's fair enough. Otherwise, what's the point of rating it?
Exactly. And then finally, and this one is bang on the ratings. Cyber beer at cyber_beer. I've changed many times since I started using it in 2013. You could only rate in full values 1 to 5 when I started using it. Now you can rate in quarter marks as well, and that's very much the same as me. Yes. When I first started using it, it was 1 to 5.
Yeah, but that's good. I think it's good. I don't think you can do anything else apart from the 0.25s. I'm pleased they do that. I'm still really loving this.
It's so drinkable.
Yeah, it is really drinkable.
For what is it? 9.7%.
Yeah. Again, okay, maybe it's just us because there's 3 beers out of 3 so far, which you just go, can't really taste the ABV.
I think you get more of the ABV on that one.
There is more of the boozy
right
feel.
At the end.
Yeah,
it's got a boozy kick
to the back end, but still not 9.7 feel.
Yeah.
So what was number 4?
Honour Thy Lord Brewer, which when we discussed it previously was around engaging brewers in discussions and brewers commenting on check-ins. Now there's a few interesting ones on this one. So First up, we had James at Gammon Baron say, brewers getting their panties in a bunch over ratings also makes me chuckle. Which we've seen a bit of that in this last year, where brewers have got upset with check-ins on Untappd and have done that thing where they've called them out on Twitter.
Yeah, which, again, probably not the best way to do it.
Bit of a shady practice.
You're better off going back on Untappd.
Because trying to have a conversation.
It stays private.
Yeah.
Because there was a beer I had from a case once, and it was from a brewery in France. And I just commented saying, wasn't that fussed about it. It turned out that probably the beer I was drinking was a bit old. And we had a bit of a conversation about it on Untappd. And that fairly much stays private, to be honest, because people don't really look at all the comments on Untappd. Because the further comments don't get pushed through to Twitter, do they?
No. Well, none of the comments.
Yeah, and that's quite a nice place to do it. But personally, I don't overtly go looking for it, but I'm quite happy to engage. Put it this way, I think if you're brave enough to slate someone, and let's face it, you're only slating 2 or 3 different people. You're either slating where you bought it from, the brewery or pub. So say it's retail, pub, brewery. You should be prepared to back it up.
Yeah, and I must admit, I did it once and I got pulled up on it as well. I rated a beer, and I won't name the brewery, but I rated a beer I'd been drinking. I think I'd been at a beer festival all afternoon drinking fizzy keg, and I went to a bar and I had a pint of cask in a chain bar, and I checked it in on Untappd and I simply rated it, and the only word I put was shit. And the brewer called me out on it, publicly on Twitter as well, and said, well, that's not very constructive, is it? That doesn't help us in any way. We then had a discussion, which then went to DM, and we had a discussion, and I actually went back and I changed what I said about it, because in hindsight, I was probably a few sheets to the wind, and after drinking an afternoon of fizzy keg, a cask beer was never going to...
It's probably the wrong way.
Yeah. But that was the right way to, I appreciate it. I got called out for being a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
Really. But I rectified that.
I think if you're prepared to put it out there.
But it then opened dialogue, and I then had a dialogue with that brewery, and
which wouldn't have come about otherwise, would it?
No, absolutely not. Also on this, we've got the bearded one at the bearded one. Stopped using it. It's not fair to rate other people's beers when you're in the industry. Just my opinion. And
no, Carl, it's just your opinion.
Yes, and that spawned a whole conversation as well. So if you do want to have a look at that conversation, go click on the link to the poll and then read.
You'll definitely find it.
And then we had Yeasty Boys fed back on this one as well. At Yeasty Boys, I've never checked anything in, and I've stopped looking at it for thoughts on our beers. I enjoyed the interaction and banter, but I don't find it valuable enough to justify the time.
I'm a bit surprised about that, because I think that some of the comments surely can be quite useful sometimes. If they're formative, if someone just goes like, you just went shit, well no,
that's telling you nothing.
That tells you nothing at all. And if you just go, loved it, or something like that, if someone actually takes the time to use up all 140 characters, then there may well be something in there.
Yeah. And on that, just the final one on this one, maybe the darkish side of Untappd revealing its head here. So, and this wasn't even in relation to the question that we put out. This happened at the same time. Hop Stuff are crowdfunding to further expand their brewery. Now, if you've not come across Hop Stuff, they're still a fairly young startup based in Woolwich.
Yeah, they're Woolwich, aren't they?
And they are expanding at quite a rate. So they're looking to invest some money now. They put this post on Facebook, and somebody came back to their Facebook post saying, if you were making better beer, then you would have my money, but your Untappd averages are pretty telling. Not that Untappd is the be all and end all, but if you're averaging below 3.6, it isn't a good sign. Improve your quality and then ask for funding. Now, I found that quite interesting, because the cynical side of me was, well, everything averages out to 3.5 on Untappd over time.
It's a 3 point something.
Yeah, because everything, even if you look at some of the best beers on there, are barely scraping the 4.
Yeah.
So I
didn't see the point of that comment at all.
I didn't.
It was like that was someone trolling just based on the Untappd.
I think so. I don't think you should ever use Untappd as a justification to do or not to do something. Yeah. Okay, so we're only at number 5.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Yeah, but for all of those folks that have missed us
and said, I don't want too short a show.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for.
This will take you for 2 weeks.
Number 5 was thou shalt use images, and I think we spoke about it quite a lot last year about, should you have a check-in with a picture? Our picture's a bit boring. I stopped doing pictures for quite a while, and then they started introducing the photo badges again.
And I started doing pictures again.
And we were doing beers of the month.
Yeah, so it was handy having
It was handy because even if I deleted the picture from my phone, it was on my Untappd.
Yeah, and that's interesting in relation to the invisible wall that we had tonight, that when we were discussing it, I said, well, actually, my picture
You've got a picture
with the handwritten label.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite nice sometimes to have that photographic record of what you've been checking in as well.
Sometimes it is, and also that's one of the things I do. Sometimes I just take a few pictures and then tap them in afterwards.
Yeah,
just off the back of the picture.
But now with the added thing as well of, and I love this. Obviously, Twitter's now increased to 280 characters.
Untappd stays at 140.
Untappd still at 140, and what that enables is that other 140 characters now will allow your picture. It will allow tags of the breweries and locations.
Yep.
And I think that's great.
I love that.
Rather than expanding what you can write to 280 characters, they've taken the decision no.
Because it means you can put in the as at.
Yep.
And everything else in location. Basically, Twitter tells you everything without having to go to Untappd, which never worked very well from Twitter anyway. It was a really cumbersome way of doing it. You had to log in all of a sudden.
But the one thing that I'd still like to be able to do, and particularly in relation to the pictures, is just to be able to click on the picture and see it rather than... Because I get caught out so many times. I click on the picture and then it takes me through to Untappd. And I'm like,
oh, damn.
I didn't want to go out of Twitter. I just wanted to see the picture. Next one, thou shalt not covet thy locations. So we were talking about locations and verified venues last year. I think verified venues had only just been introduced.
Yeah.
But obviously, we've spoken already this evening about verified venues.
I find it useful.
We've got a number of them in our location, and they've all now got specific badges that are personal to those venues as well.
Yeah, so the Ale House and the Victorian, which are the two which I tend to get the most verified badges for, have like cask related badges or verified venue badges, don't they? Which I'm not looking for them, but quite like it when it comes up.
Yeah,
if I'm being honest. But like I said, the verified thing is handy.
Yeah, and a couple of people commented on particularly the location thing as well. So Ken O'Kelly at Ken Knock, still use it to log and rate beer, but getting bored of writing reviews. Good for looking up what's being served in pubs and venues and what friends are drinking. Sometimes good to see what's new as well. And then Spick at Spickmaster said, useful to keep track of beers, which I was doing on my phone anyway. Now I also use it to find good venues, particularly abroad.
Which is what I was speaking about earlier about my changes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's I know people have to pay to be a verified venue, but I have found it a useful addition.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 7 was thou shalt have no other gods before me, brackets beer, in which we were talking about should Untappd only be for beer.
Curiously at the time, what did we say?
I haven't actually listened back.
Because I was trying to work out about that, because I do have a cider every now and again, but a bit like Canberra, it's supposed to be a beer thing, isn't it?
It is supposed to be a beer thing.
So it shouldn't be there. And you definitely should be able to have blends.
Blends are removed.
Good.
I think.
Is that just by Tom?
No, but from talking to Tom, because I'm not sure we were in this position last year, but we've got obviously a friend who's an Untappd moderator, and he will remove certain things that aren't supposed to be on Untappd.
Yeah, we've both suffered from that before.
We have, and if you're a supporter, you can go into your Untappd stats and you can find out which of your check-ins have been removed.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, believe me, Tom's going to get interrogated next time I see him for removing some of my beers. I want to know why. I want 4,000 words in writing.
That's brilliant.
As to why.
So the next one, following on from that, was thou shalt not covet mass disciples. So again, I presume this was countless check-ins, pushing it through to Twitter, pushing it through to Facebook, if I remember correctly. Use of Untappd in regular company. If other people don't use it, don't spend all day on your phone checking stuff in. I have a comment to make about this.
Go on then.
And there's a few other comments which were dotted through all of the feedback we got, okay? Generally, people spend time on their phone.
Yes.
When you're out. I don't really care what they're on, whether it be Untappd, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, texting, whatever. As long as it doesn't break the flow of what I'm doing. So if it's a one-to-one and suddenly you spend 5 minutes on your phone, fairly much that's broken the flow, okay? But there's a group of you, and 1 or 2 of you are doing it, there's probably enough to carry the conversation because there's enough interaction going on. So to home in on just one aspect of people using the phone is a whole load of bollocks, to be honest. I don't really care. I'm not checking to see what they're doing. But if you're on my train, I don't care what the fuck you do, as long as you do it quietly, whether it be texting, messaging, whatever. I just don't want to know about it.
Coming soon to a podcasting app near you, Martin's Travel Adventures.
And on that note,
final thoughts on the acid jam, including your flavour notes, because we've still not covered those from what our original ones were.
Well, I looked at my Untappd earlier, and I just said out in Hopinions on Thursday at 6.
Yeah, which is why I've stopped doing that.
Yeah,
in Untappd.
And I have to take your point, and that doesn't really help.
Yeah.
There's definitely, like I said, those fruity sour notes come through, but it's not tart at all, is it? And you do get that whiskey and vanilla coming through. The red wine, not so much, but I loved it second time round.
What we said first time around was raspberries, woody and complexity, malty finish, lots of dryness and slight sharpness.
I don't think there's so much sharpness now.
No, I think it's balanced out.
It's very well rounded.
And I think if anybody's got a bottle of that still, just leave it for a bit longer.
Yeah.
Because that's just going to continue to mellow. And it's going to turn into something fucking amazing.
And quite a lot different to the first iteration or the first starting point of it.
Absolutely. So we've just poured another beer.
Yeah, another one which we had before.
Yes, so this is the White Hag Black Boar Imperial Oatmeal Stout, which we first had longer ago than I thought we first had it. We had this back in September 2016.
Blimey, that was early days for me.
It was the first month that we actually started podcasting together, where we released a short series of Irish beer reports. So this was on the very first Irish beer report. And we both said that we thought, because we had it fairly fresh.
We said it was too young.
We thought it was too fresh.
We said everything was in there, but it just wasn't coming out.
It needed time. So it's had 18 months.
Okay.
So what do we think 18 months on?
Now, obviously, like I said, it's a year and a half ago since we had it. Straight away, this feels just like it's settled and just mellowed a little bit.
It's smoothed out.
Yeah.
There's still a big bitterness right at the end there.
Which I quite like the bitterness.
Yeah.
I think I liked it then, but I think before the bitterness there wasn't as much going on. And now I'm just getting loads of chocolate.
Well, going back to what we said on that first show, roasted aroma, which I think is still...
Honestly, I'm getting a lot less of that.
Harsh finish and a little on the bitter side.
Getting the bitter, no harshness.
No harshness. Maybe the bitter's ramped up a little bit. And a little bit, we found there was a little bit of an afterburn on it as well from the alcohol.
At the moment, no.
It's properly rounded out, hasn't it? It has smoothed
But doesn't that go to show then? But there is definitely a process which happens.
Yeah.
Like we definitely said that was the big takeaway from that little segment we did then, was that was just a bit too young.
Yeah. And like I say, 18 months on, it's very much come on a bit as a beer.
Really well rounded at the moment.
So just going back into what we was talking about there about not coveting mass disciples. Fnord at Fnord2323, after a comment on one of your live pods, I'd made more of an effort to review a beer rather than just check it in. I'm glad we've influenced somebody in the way they use Untappd. Rob Dites at Rob_Dites. Now tend to only use it for beers I've never had. Seldom include photos and sometimes just a couple of words and rating. Become a harsher judge over time as well.
Cool. Blimey, I've gone the other way.
You have, haven't you? Yeah.
I've become more generous.
And then this one, which I think we might both agree with, Ben Hooper at Who Da Hop. Checking in a beer without leaving a little comment is so annoying. It's a social media platform. Your posts are public. Other users will scan through them looking for some pointers about the beer they are drinking, buying. Use it properly or get off.
I think for the first time I check in a beer, I always try to do something. Not guaranteed, depending. I try to do something. And if then when I have it again and it's changed, or for better or for worse, I'll try to put something quantitative as well.
Yeah.
And Ben Hooper's right. I have flicked through a few beers and gone, when's someone going to say something about a beer?
Yeah.
When is someone going to go from that 3.5 mark to saying I like it, or why it was good, or why it was bad? And you go, oh shit, no one's written anything.
Sometimes I've got to admit what he said there as well. Sometimes I do look at it for pointers as well in terms of tasting notes. Sometimes I will get a beer and I'm like, I don't know what to say about it, and I'll scan through and I'll see what people have said about it, and I'll be like, oh yeah, actually I'm getting a little bit of that.
Unless you've chosen a beer which is from a foreign land and everyone's writing in their native tongue, you go, okay, that's no help.
Which is a bit difficult, yeah. But things like specifically at the moment, I think I've mentioned I've really been enjoying the Stone IPA at the moment, the mid-December batch that's out. I think the first one of those I had, I wrote some notes about, and subsequent ones have just been banging, cracking, brilliant. But it'll be interesting to get the next batch
and see if it's
and to have the first one and check it against that first one of the previous batch, just to see if there's any difference in the tasting notes.
I'm sure you'll do your best.
I of course I will.
For scientific purposes.
For completely. Give my body to science. We're almost there, folks. We've just got 2 more to go. Thou shalt live in the moment. So this is including retrospective check-ins and timescales around them. We are both guilty of retrospective check-ins.
Yep, and I'm definitely less harsh about timelines.
I'm still within 24, maybe 48 hours at a push.
Oh, I've been days.
Outside of that, I just think that's when I stop pushing to Twitter altogether. Even if it's a new beer, I'm like, no, I'm outside of that window now.
It depends on the beer, but it's after Essex bottle share sometimes. If I've been on the train at the wrong time and the train is going through a whole load of black spots, it can be another 48 hours before I check in all the beers.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people here that were talking about it being a distraction when you're out with people as well. So a comment from at Clayfish: I'm using it less and less. This lazy bastard can't be asked. I also find it distracting to check in when I'm drinking with others. That was echoed by Bob the Beer as well, in terms of saying when you're out drinking, live in the moment sort of thing.
Yeah, but I still maintain people go on their phone. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you, Clayton, and you, Bob, definitely go on your phone while we're out, but people still go on their phone, so it doesn't matter what it is for me. And there's always a moment where, even if you're not writing substantive notes, you can probably just add it to a list, but especially with the list function, if that's what you want to do. If you don't want to do it, then fine. But it's not as if everyone just doesn't put their phone away.
Yeah, no, and that's true, and I think I will be guilty of that tomorrow night at Bottle Share as well, where I won't be out checking in the beers, but
you'll be on your phone.
I'll certainly be on my phone, scanning them or searching for them to add to a list, because it will make it easier to check them in the following morning.
So but I do agree. I mean, when me and Clayton were out on Friday lunchtime, I think between us we checked in 1 beer each, and we had 5. Each, 5 halves. So we just got into that thing where we just said, okay.
Sometimes it just naturally stays in your pocket, doesn't it?
I took a picture of the board. I knew for lunchtime. I know which ones I've had. Job done.
And I seem to have this strange memory where even if I'm not checking beers in at the time and I'm checking them in the following morning, I can always recall 1 or 2 tasting notes. Which I think the morning after the Crimbo Crawl, I was checking in all of my beers from the day before, with a couple of tasting notes.
Apart from the ones at the Rutland Arms.
Because that never happened. And somebody actually commented, "How the hell are you remembering these beers?" And I was like, "I've no idea."
Yeah, I can't remember anything else.
Yeah, up until this point, and this window here that was in the Rutland Arms, it's gone. And the final one, so thou shalt not commit adultery, which was the use of other rating sites, which apparently there are other rating sites. The chaps at Beernomicon helping us out this week by running a very timely poll. Will the new Rate Beer Best 100 Beers in the World list influence what you drink this year? So that was a poll that they ran.
What did their scores come out?
Yes or no? 89% said no. I fed back on it, and I did comment on this one as well. And I simply said to them, I'm not influenced by that or Untappd in terms of what other people are checking in. What I'm checking in is my own view on a certain thing at a time. But it's interesting that Rate Beer published the 100 breweries in the world, and there were quite a lot of UK breweries featuring in the top 10.
Well, Cloudwater I think came second.
Cloudwater was second.
Burnt Mill was best new brewery.
Yeah, there were a lot of UK breweries had a very good showing in that. So
and although Rate Beer doesn't really exist for me, congratulations to all of you who did well in it.
Absolutely, yeah. Very quickly then, so that's our revisit of the Untappd Commandments, which we think are probably still there or thereabouts. A few other comments that we got. There were a lot of people said that they've stopped using it. Who probably aren't even worth a mention, to be honest with you.
Don't even know who they are.
No. Jamie H at Merchant of Shite. Never used it. I'd rather concentrate on the new and sexy beer in front of me than any other people's opinions on it. So the likes of Rate Beer and Untappd remain resolutely unused by me. I have my own nerdy beer list on my phone, but shit-faced Jamie isn't great at updating that, to be fair.
I have nothing to say to that, but I do like the "but shit-faced Jamie" in the third person.
Yeah, I love that. And then Nate Nolan at Mr. Drink and Eat said, been a beer lover commentator and have worked in the industry for a few years now, but I've never used it, not even felt tempted to. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm not sure I'm the only one. So
if you've never started, don't.
Yeah, just maybe leave it.
Don't.
Yeah.
It's a rabbit hole, like all of these things.
Yeah. Which nicely segues to the final comment on this, which is from Chicken Dipper at Solander Graham. I was introduced to Untappd at almost the same time I discovered decent beer. They'd gone hand in hand with me all the way down the rabbit hole. I found it a useful way to discover new beers and to keep track of my hobby obsession.
I would agree with Chicken Dipper because my first Untappd check-in is my first Beerboards beer. So I was a Beerboards subscriber for the best part of 4 years, and my first Untappd check-in, first Beerboards beer are the same and always will be.
And I think we've spoken about that a number of times, haven't we? Insofar as I think for me, Untappd opened up the world of beer.
Yeah.
Because when I had that first Kraft, and I'm doing the comments thing with my fingers, beer, I didn't know what it was. No. So I searched for it on Google, and the first thing that came up was Untappd. And I was like, ooh.
I wonder if you did that now, would Rate Beer come up first?
Well, who knows? But that's been, as always, a fucking great discussion.
Yeah, some fantastic. Actually, to be honest, loads of comments.
Yeah,
and apologies to everyone who we haven't read out.
I would have loved to covered every comment. Yeah. But there were getting in excess of 60 odd comments on this one.
There was a lot of comments this week.
Yeah,
and it was really good to see them all. We did read them all, we just can't read them all out. So
we just have to. Sometimes we have to choose the comments that are going to stimulate discussion between us.
Yeah.
More so than reading out what's been put in. But we do appreciate everyone feeding in, and make sure you keep doing that. Keep using the hashtag Hopinions in the live poll or after the show, and we'll continue to include your comments.
Yeah, whenever they come up.
Yeah, because we do have fantastically a section just in case there are any comments for you.
Let us know, write it down. Let us know, write it down. Let us know your thoughts and bitter and lingerness. Write it down.
Last week we were talking about Odyssey's Kegged On IPA.
Yep.
And we asked if anybody had any comments, if they'd actually got a chance to try it. And there were a couple of comments that we had in. So this is Mark Young at Marky Monkey Young. Knocked out by the lurgy for the last week or so. Odyssey KO IPA is the perfect prescription. Take numerous times a day for 4 days. Complete the course. Kegged yesterday, best before Sunday, and tasted amazing on day one at my local. So somebody got to try it.
Miles went on to say that, for your information, a keg of Odyssey Brew KO went on sale in Copper's Gospel on Thursday night, and it lasted all the way until later on Thursday night. So apparently it lasted about 2 hours.
Yeah. And then the final one, and we spoke last week about Brewdog's Born to Die.
Yes.
It
was a bit of a throwaway comment at the time.
Yeah, and a couple of people picked up on it, didn't they?
And so Janice of Irish Beer Snobs said her and Wayne were wondering where it had gone to, and a few other people were thinking the same, etc. And literally before the show, I happened to see a comment. So from Matt _Olsen to Brewdog, been a while since the last release of Born to Die. When will it next be brewed? And so Brewdog, head of engagement, although a fantastic beer, I loved it. It simply did not sell as well as we'd hoped. Rather than continue to release it, we've given it a break and we'll look for ways to improve the concept. We've learned those from brewing it and are open to bringing it back, but we haven't decided when or in what format yet. Keep an eye out for another hoppy West Coast IPA coming soon though. I don't know what that was. This was back in October. But I completely missed that announcement that Born to Die had died.
Yeah, and I think it's a shame because I think it was a very good beer. I think we spoke briefly before the show that there was maybe a dodgy one in the middle that might have put a few people off, but it's a shame to have seen that concept disappear.
I think on the whole there was more wins than losses.
Yeah.
If you had to weigh it up on the weighing scales, there was more positives than negatives from Born to Die.
Maybe it was their move to put in that last one in a can.
I thought that was alright. Because did it start? It started out as 8.5, didn't it?
It did, but I'm talking visually wise because you went from a
660
660ml bomber
that
looked impressive to a 330ml can.
True.
And the 660ml bomber had the
embossed
label, and the can was just flat.
Yeah,
it was matte surface.
That's possible. I think it's a shame.
It is a shame. I'd like to see it. I for one would like to see it come back.
So would I. And I think it was one of the. If you take away the core beers from Brewdog, which I think are still very good, I think it's one of the best ones they did.
Yeah, I totally agree. Final thoughts on the White Hag.
What, the almost finished?
Yes.
White Hag. I think all the things we hoped it was 18 months ago are starting to come through.
It's what it's become.
Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely had it too fresh.
Yeah.
Sometimes too fresh is not good, especially when you're talking impy stouts.
When you're talking double figures impy stout,
a
few months after it's been released, you can tell what it might be, but it's not what it should be.
Absolutely. Well, mate, this has been a great stumble through some really big beers this evening.
It's been good though.
It has been good, and the listeners have got their wish in our first ever 2 hour plus show.
Yeah,
as well.
More Phil, you lot.
Yes. Obviously, what you wish for, and
exactly,
and all of that. As always, you can still get involved. Yeah, we're struggling with the words at the end.
Remember #Hopinions. You'll always get. We'll always find it. We'll always. If it's really good, you'll get a mention.
Saved me there. Thank you very much. What's up next time? Do you remember? Do you know?
Is it the start of our crossover?
It is. We are.
Is this a secret crossover which men behaving badly haven't mentioned?
It is which they revealed in the worst.
Real badly.
Yeah, but it was brilliant to listen to because clearly they were unsure as to whether they should be saying it, unsaying anything, and then they were too far down the path. So it all just came out anyway. Yeah, we're doing a crossover with men behaving badly. As with all of our crossovers, we like to do the two-part thing where we do their show and our show. So we're going to do one of their guest hours episodes with them, and then they're coming on Hopinions.
Good luck to them.
And I'm still not revealing what it is we're drinking.
No, and nor will we.
And nor will we until the evening, because we want to see the surprise in the little whites of their eyes.
Or is that the looks of horror?
Probably the latter. But until then, mate, it's been a pleasure as always. Cheers.
Cheers.
Don't go changing to try and please us. You never let us down before. Don't imagine you're too familiar and we don't listen anymore. We wouldn't leave you in times of trouble. We never could have come this far. Ooh, we took the good times. We'll take the bad times. We'll take you just the way you are.